Mr. Roy, are we ready? Up there? Okay, perfect. Okay. Good evening. We are going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedules. We know how busy schedules are right now on a Wednesday evening to be here with us this evening. This is really a good turnout. We weren't really sure what to expect, so we appreciate you coming this evening and hope that you will leave here with a lot of information. It's going to be, you're going to have a lot of slides, which were emailed to you about 6:15 through Parent Square. So you should have the slideshow in your email, and then we're also recording tonight. And so the recording will be available in the next day or two, but we'll push that out as soon as it's downloaded and ready to go. So if you just want to sit and listen tonight, great. If you want to take notes, great. But you will get a recording of tonight's meeting as well. Just want to say thank you for being here. We have lots of slides to go through. We have several speakers. I'm going to introduce everybody in just a moment. But I want to just kind of give us just a snapshot of our agenda as we go through this evening. The vision, we're going to kind of go through some historical information. What has really probably resonated with me the most being here in just over 2 years is a lot of people have come to the community new, just like I did, and had to do a lot of studying to figure out kind of the historical portion of all of this. And we want to make sure everyone has that same viewpoint and perspective as we go through the next couple of years in transitioning. Obviously, the attendance zones were adopted last December, and then we'll go through the design and kind of the plan in phase one. So that's really what you can expect this evening to go through on our slides. Just a few things I want to go through before we get started into all of the historical information. Want to take just a moment really to thank several of the people that are going to be presenting here tonight. There's been a lot of the behind the scenes going on with us for the last couple of years in the transition work, and of course they have their day-to-day jobs, their day-to-day coaching, their day-to-day band directing, their day-to-day being a principal, all the things that go on with that. And they've continued to stay steady focus on this process and this transition as we've gotten to this point. So I just want to take a few moments to thank them. I would like to thank Dr. Chris Daniel, our Deputy Superintendent, who's here with us this evening. Dr. Don Jordan, Assistant Superintendent of Learner Services. We have Liz Seward, our CFO, here with us this evening. And then Rick Herron, I think, is in the back, our Chief Communications Officer. We have Coach Todd Rogers here, our Athletic Director. Jason Bird, our Director of Bands. We have Coach Chance Westmoreland also with us this evening, who is our Assistant Athletic Director. We have Principal Shannon Knowles from Argyle High School. We have Principal Donna Lumsden from Argyle Middle School. And then we also are very fortunate this evening to have two of our trustees present with us tonight, and that's Josh Westrom and Leanne Artho. And certainly appreciate them being here, not only as trustees representing the district, but also as parents. And I want to do a special thank you to Greg Rohrer, who's up in the sound booth up there, making sure our recording is taken care of this evening, and then Travis and Aaron Turek, who graciously gave up their SpongeBob stage for us this evening as they've been practicing for all of their the performances. So thank all of those people. Let's give them a round of applause, please. So tonight we're going to share what we know at this point. We're going to give you everything we have at this point. There's a lot of, like I said, a lot of this in here. A lot of this involves the questions we've been asked over the last several months and really the last year through Just Ask Argyle or just a question out at a community event, whatever it may be. We've been collecting all of those, and so we've tried to build everything into this presentation. We still have a lot of decisions left to make, and rightfully so, because we're still 2 years out from the high school's transition, but we've got demographer reports coming in. We'll have a fall one coming in December, another spring one coming in May, and so some of those decisions are yet to be made, but we've got a pretty good start on most of this. And so there may be some answers tonight that you don't get that you want, but we'll continue to give those as soon as we have that information. We just can't provide everything for you this evening. We'll email out the Just Ask Argyle link and make sure you have a chance to add additional questions that you may formulate after tonight or in the weeks to come. But really, as far as just a few things, like I said, the presentation has been emailed and we'll have a recording for you. And then upon conclusion tonight, we will have our staff will stay. And we'll stay for 15, 20 minutes, whatever it is, because I know there's a lot of individualized questions, and usually that's what we get, more scenario-based, and we'll stay back and make sure you have answers to those questions this evening. So really moving forward from a historical perspective, I wanted to take us back just a moment to January 2023. So for anyone that does not recall that particular month, that was the month that the Board of Trustees adopted the Long-Range Strategic Growth Plan. And this was actually the quote that came out from that press release when that was adopted. And, you know, as President Sam Slayton said, our greatest intention is to provide the best opportunity for our children to be well-educated and well-rounded citizens that will one day be leading us. And that meeting was the one where it was adopted that we would have 2 high schools, or multiple high schools, if you will, and we're working on 2 right now. And so that is kind of our starting point. That's where all of this began. And then I joined the district in July of 2023, and so we have continued working on that moving forward from that point. So just from a little bit of how we got here, that growth plan was adopted in 2023. As soon as I got on board here, we started a bond and growth planning committee, which several of you in the room may have served on in the fall of 23. The board called a bond in February of 2024, and on that particular bond, there were expansions to the Argyle High School campus at Canyon Falls and expansions to this campus to make 2 equally sized high schools, potentially 5A. That bond failed in May of 2024, so we had to go back to the drawing board with some community input, and in the fall of 24, we reconvened that bond committee. The board called another election last February, and at that point, we didn't have anything in there to expand the capacities of either this campus or the Canyon Falls High School campus. And so therefore, it would be a 5A and a 4A, which is where we are today, and that's what we're planning for. And that bond passed, and so we are moving forward with planning for a 5A and a 4A. And then we continue to move forward with that planning. So the history, I'm going to let Coach Rogers come up just a moment. I think this is really important for those of you that, whether you've been in the district for many, many years or you're newer to the district, this campus obviously was the original high school. It served as a middle school and a high school combination. And as a team, they've gone back and looked at lots of historical data, what classifications they were, what grade levels, and what sports were offered during that time frame. So I'm going to ask Coach Rogers to come up and talk a little bit about the history of the athletics program.
So this is a lot of information, but perspective-wise, and when we opened up with the numbers that we had, my first year in 2003, we had a realignment year in the UIL. They do it every 2 years. And we had 287 students in the high school portion, even though we were 6 through 12. So I brought my kids out here. My daughter was in the 7th grade, and there were senior boys in the building. It worked great. We had a good plan. We worked the plan. We had 2 different administrations. So if you look back at the formative years, in 1999, we played no varsity team sports. The sports over there we were offered are over on the right. In 2000 and 2001 school year, it was a 6 through 10, and the girls' coaches and the board and the administration decided they would play girls' varsity sports. So just with 9th and 10th graders, they elected to do that. They didn't think they had critical masses on the boys' side, so they chose to play renegade schedules in all the sports. And then in 2001 and 2002, they were 6 through 11. They still chose to play sub-varsity football, so they played another renegade schedule. I've talked to Jim Randall. He was the head coach. They tried to play Thursday night games where the band marched, with the cheerleaders, to try to make it as a spectacle of a Friday night experience as much as possible. And then they continued to play varsity sports and all the other sports. And then 2002, 2003, obviously you can see up there. And then from 3 to 6, we did the same thing. So let me give you some perspective on the sports programs. I went back and matched all the numbers up. We supported 3 boys basketball programs, 3 basketball teams, excuse me. Girls basketball, we had 3 basketball teams. We had a varsity, we had a JV, and we had a 9th grade. Volleyball, we had 3. Track, we had varsity and JV. So we still currently have those same amount of numbers in track. Cross country, much the same. Golf, fewer golfers, so we usually just supported varsity teams with that, but we had some, like it takes 5 to go play in a golf team. We may have had 6 or 7 kids. We just didn't have enough for 2 full teams. In regards to tennis, this is the days before team tennis, so we practiced and played matches in the spring only, and then so we didn't play the team tennis. Now we have a team tennis element where you play our team versus somebody else's team. Wrestlers, we only had male wrestlers at that point. Now we have female wrestling. Female wrestling is one of the fastest growing sports in Texas and across the nation. So we did support 1 baseball team and 1 softball team those first few years, and then we escalated to 2 teams, a varsity and a JV. We now currently have 3 teams at the high school. So there weren't many sports that were cuts, but we did have cuts in our basketball program in the early years. Not the first couple years, but as we escalated through that window of 2A, we had kids that didn't make the teams. If you looked at that next segment when we were 3A, obviously we were supporting all kinds of teams. I stood at the board and that we added soccer. And I said it's going to be tough sledding because back in those days we only had 4A and 5A soccer, and so we had to play against teams that were much larger than us. And we only had enough players for a varsity girls and a varsity boys. It wasn't until we moved over to Canyon Falls that we had enough kids interested in varsity boys soccer to even add a JV boys soccer. So we just currently support 2 teams in our soccer programs right then. If you look at the next window, when we were 4A, we supported all levels. We now have 3 girls basketball teams, 3 volleyball teams. We even supported a 9th grade B team this year just so we would have critical masses, so when we do divide, we have enough kids with legitimate playing experience in the high school. In this last year, in 2021, we added girls wrestling, and we don't subscribe to the fact that the girls should be wrestling against the boys, so we wanted to get critical masses to have that, and we have a full team now, even some JV wrestlers. And then obviously in 22 through 25, we're supporting is we even have a swim team. Now the swim team is, we don't supervise practice, but if they swim club, then Coach Lundy takes them to meets, and then we do the UIL forms, and we take them to the district meet, the regional meet, and even we've had state competitive swimmers just supporting it from that point. So this is kind of an overall picture of the sports that we've produced. The reasons behind adding them is just critical masses. So going back to what it's going to look like when we open this building, I think we're going to be able to support all kinds of sports. It's just drumming up the interest and trying to go back to our percentages that we had back in the old days, and that's going to be a challenge. And it won't happen instantly, but it will happen organically. There'll be more kids interested in more sports, and we can get back to the grassroots of the design way back in 2002, way back in 2003.
All right, thank you very much for that historical perspective, and I think that's one of the things that I know I was very interested in, is to kind of see when those grade levels were added on, matriculated up, and then when those sports were added. So thank you, Coach Rogers, for that. And then from the fine arts standpoint, we're going to have Mr. Bird come up and talk about the same programs, if you will, in those same time frames. So Mr. Bird.
Good evening, everybody. How are we doing? I got here in 2018, so I was not here when we opened the building. I have several directors on my staff who've been here much longer than me. Mr. Fletcher's been here for a very long time. But I got here in 2018, brought my family here when the position opened, but loved every single moment in this district. So I had to go back a little bit, ask a lot of questions to some of the staff who were here. When we opened up with a band, theater, and art as our fine arts classes. And we just really, in the band side of things, we really just opened up as just a concert band in 2000, 2001. And theater 99 and 2000. We didn't add the marching band until 2001, 2002 years when we added our marching band program. And that was status quo for a long time. We had a very large marching band at that point, especially for that classification. But we had, again, art, theater, and band. When 2016, really just before I got here, we added the concert choir. 2015, 2016, and I don't know the first choir director's name, but the second choir director was Will Griswold, and he came in and he immediately started an a cappella program, and started growing the choir program in 2017. That's where added Remedy. We added dance in 2017, 2018, and added the drill team at the same time, 2017, 2018. Just most recently, we've added middle school jazz band. This kind of came up today in a topic of discussion. As we started to grow, in the band program, sometimes we recruit in a club first. So we'll recruit kids like, okay, is there interest in jazz band? So we did start some like after school jazz band clubs to see if there's any interests. We had casual interest here and there throughout the several years before we actually added it as a class. And so that happened in 2022. I think we added the middle school jazz band, and just this year we've added the high school jazz band. Right now in the middle school jazz band, I think we have about 35 students enrolled. In the high school jazz band, we only have about 10, but we do suspect that will grow as the jazz band interest enters into the high school. But yeah, that's what we have. Thank you so much.
All right, and we'll hear from them some more in a little bit as well. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about where we are right now. So we've gone through kind of the historical perspective, and one of the things that we have really focused on every time we sit down and we have our transition team meetings or we're working through different things is we always look at kind of that purpose of multi-activity involvement, students involved in lots of things. That was the premise behind wanting to have our classes smaller, our schools a little bit smaller, is our students can be involved in things. And so that continues to be the lens that we use. We want our students well-rounded, strong sense of a belonging, and if that comes through a lot of these activities that they'll have access to. So you have seen this. It has been out. The board adopted the attendance zones last December, so almost a year ago. We've had questions about the feeder patterns, and so we put this out several weeks ago, and this is just kind of where we are from important milestones this fall. So the attendance zones obviously have been adopted, and so we've got several things going on right now. If you've seen the naming nomination form for new schools is out. It's out through November 7th. That's part of CW local board policy. It's taking nominations through that point. We will have the naming of the 377 mascot and colors for this campus coming up. So all of those preliminary recommendations will be presented to the board at the November board meeting, and then they'll be up for considered for action in December. And then we'll have naming of the middle school principals. That'll be a board decision expected December, this upcoming December. And then we'll have the presentation of the fall demography report in December. So December's a big meeting as far as decision making. It will include decisions on naming, decisions on mascots, colors, decision on principal, and decision are really a presentation on the fall demography report, which we're all very interested in as a fast growth district like we are, to see what it's looking like based on last year's fall report. So as we move into the meat of the program tonight, just want to make sure, and you're going to see this pretty much on every slide, these are planning discussions, and some of this is preliminary, some of it's further along, but it's intended for your information at this point. Plans could evolve and change in some different ways based on the demography reports that we get this fall. Also next spring, we usually get one in May, or we will get one in May. But any final decisions are still subject to change. So I want to make sure everyone understands that, and we will communicate as we go along. But we're using what we have right now to move us forward in our planning. As far as a timeline, this is just kind of what it looks like in terms of everything opening. We have the West Zone and the East Zone middle schools transitioning into two campuses, into two separate campuses next fall. So the campus at 407, that's going to be the West Attendance Zone, which is paired with the 6th grade center, and the East Attendance Zone will stay here, and it will be 6th, 7th, and 8th grade on this campus. And then the following year in 27, we will West Zone will be Canyon Falls High School. The East Zone will be high school here. And we're going to talk a little bit about two different potential opening configurations, and we'll get into a little more details of that in a minute. Right now it says 9th through 10th right there, but we're going to talk about that a little bit more. And then, of course, in 28, 29, same thing, and you'll just have those classes matriculating up until you get your first graduation class. So that's kind of the timeline of the next few years. When I talk about planning configurations, it's a lot on the screen, but we want to make sure you have all the information and really see what we're using to plan with. There's a lot of things from strengths and challenges on both of these. We've been talking to lots of districts that have gone through this. I came from a district that went through this in 2014, 15. We've talked to districts that have gone through it in the last 5 years, and everybody does it a little bit differently, and it all kind of depends on their community and what their, the configurations are of their campuses. But we wanted you to have the information because this is what we're looking at as we're going through how we're going to open the two high schools, or how we're going to open this high school. The current planning configuration, what we're using to plan right now is straight 9th and 10th grade. But we also have in our planning documents working with 9th grade and then the 10th and 11th grade option, because we know our 10th graders are going to go over to Canyon Falls as freshmen, and then the next year this high school opens. And so there's lots of things that we want to make sure that you all know that we're considering. So from a 9-10, just a 9-10 only campus, or 9-10 to open, that's clean, right? That's clean. That says everybody on the east side that's a 9th or 10th grader, you're going to 377. For us as an administration, that's the most predictable. It's the easiest to staff. I mean, those are the things that are easier on us, but it's not necessarily the right thing to do for kids or the right things to do for our families who have been in the middle of a lot of this transition lately. So we're looking at all the short-term challenges of that. It means your 10th graders, like I said, will go start over there and then be required to come back. Another challenge for that is your East Zone 11th graders who might want to come here and go to 11th and 12th grade at this campus wouldn't have that option. And then you've got multiple you've got lots of sibling transfers going on in there that gets very difficult and very convoluted. So those are the things that we've kind of listed out as our major talking points when we're thinking about opening configurations. As far as the alternate configuration, the one that we've started studying quite a bit lately, even more so, after talking to some other districts, is that the 9th graders start, because it's a fresh start, so the 9th graders in the East Zone all start at 377, and then you have your 10th and 11th graders that have some option there. The strengths of that is it creates the most choice for our families. It gives you the opportunity to make the best decision for your family and your student. It's feasible because we're including 6th graders, 7th graders, and 8th graders. It's the most feasible as far as that goes in terms of numbers. It gives your East Zone and your 10th and 11th the option, and it reduces sibling transfers, because at that point, since 10th and 11th have the option, the only sibling transfers would be the freshmen that are tied to a senior that's over at Canyon Falls. And right now, we've run our rosters. Currently, we have 12 freshmen that are tied to a senior that year that would be over at Canyon Falls. So we've got our data, and we've been looking at rosters and trying to figure out how many students are involved. From a challenge standpoint, again, like I said, that's more difficult on administration, but that's okay if that's what's best for families and best for kids. It makes our rosters and class sizes a little less predictable, but we can work through that as we get commitments from families. It will have 2 smaller graduating classes right off the bat, because instead of just 1, you would have 2, because you have 2 with choice. And we would have to require a minimum number to make it work, just from a staffing standpoint, and making sure classes fill. And so we'd have to look at that, and typically that's about half the class. But I know in my past experience, we had a junior option, and we had half the class that wanted to go. It wasn't even close. We didn't have to worry about it. So those are some things we have to consider. Once decisions are made, they're final, because we've got a plan, so we can't have the back and forth. We would need families to make a decision. And then we talked about the 9th grader. The 9th grader would be tied to the 12th grader, and the way policy is written is the sibling has a 1-year transfer while that student is still at the other campus finishing. And so that's something parents have to consider, because it's a 1-year transfer. And then transportation for any option, obviously, is a responsibility of the parent. So those are some of the things that we're working through. We share this with you tonight to show you that we're not just trying to make an easy knee-jerk decision. We're really thinking through all the possibilities and trying to figure out what's best for everybody. As we know, many of you have had your students involved in transitions, especially if they're in 5th or 8th grade, for many years right now in this district, because that's where the growth has happened. And so then this next chart, you've seen this on our website. It's been out for almost a year now at this point, since we've tweaked it just a little bit. I just kind of wanted to show you right now. We're in the very top row across there, the lime green. That's what next year looks like. So next year's the middle school, and that's the configuration. The turquoise there is going to be the first year of the 2 high schools. And again, we have it set with 9th and 10th only. That's just because that's how we've originally been planning. And then in 28-29, obviously you have a junior class, and then in 29-30 you have your first graduating class here. If we happen to do the 10-11 option, which you'll see in a little bit, we'll have a graduating class a year earlier, and we'll talk about that. So I want to give you some just kind of enrollment realities right now. So this is where we are based on last spring's demographer report, and then we'll update again once we get the new one. But this is from an outlook through 2030-31 from a middle school standpoint. So the west side, which is going to be 6th grade center tied to 407, That's what our numbers are as far as capacities. That 407 middle school that's going to open is a 1,200 student capacity, and you'll see we have, according to the demographic report right now, room for those next several years in there. Same thing with the sixth grade center as we pull the sixth graders into this zone out. For this side, you've got the school, you'll be combined from 26, 27, so the first year it's 6, 7, 8. Then the next year it's 6, 7, 8, and then it's 9, 10, or 9, 10 and some 11s. And then in 28, 29, that's the last year it's combined because the bond that passed in May has the second middle school. We are working to finalize a few things as far as some potential land purchases, and then we'll be able to know exactly where that middle school is going to be located because we have to get started where typically it's a 4-year process. And so by 2029, we'll be opening the second middle school, of which then the 6th through 8th graders in this campus will go to their own campus, and this is all strictly 9-12. So that's what the dashed line is showing when that second middle school opens, and it's a standalone building. And it's, again, a 1,200 capacity building. So you'll see we have some room based on these configurations in our campuses at the middle school for a little while with some breathing room there. We will, once the middle school principal for 407 is named, we'll have a middle school meeting for the families on the west side to go over the same information regarding the middle schools. And then, of course, their high school's already established with Ms. Knowles. From a high school standpoint, from a capacity and enrollment realities, you have here, you'll see the Canyon Falls campus is over here. So the year we transition into 2 high schools, you'll see that the Canyon Falls campus is slated to be at 1720. That's, what are we right now, Ms. Knowles, at the high school? 1730. So 2 years from now, which obviously next year will be even more, but 2 years from now, that'll get them back to that point. But remember, that's with them having all the juniors and seniors in that year, not having any juniors pulled off of there. And this is based on 9-10 only right now. And then, so the first year over here, 473 is the anticipated number. That would be probably a UIL 3A that very first year. I know Coach Rogers touched on this just a little bit because that's an odd year. It's in the middle of an alignment. So that's the reason you don't have varsity football for that first year, because it's in the middle of a 2-year alignment. So it's called a renegade schedule. Any district that opens in the middle of an alignment has the same scenario. It's not uncommon. And then the following year in 28-29, the UIL puts you in a full 2-year district, and at that point, everybody's in a normal district. And we would be turning in numbers would most likely put us in the 4A range right away. So you can see how it quickly begins to go up there as we add grade levels. And then you'll see highlighted there in 2030-31, those middle school students, they move out in the 29 year, but by 30-31, it's showing 1324. Well, the capacity of this building is 1,300. So just the reality, and this is something we've talked about publicly, you've seen it, if you've watched any of our board meetings, we're talking about all of the demographer reports. We know that we will have to look at that year and look at either whether it's attendance zone, we're going to have to go back, to the board's going to have to make some decisions on do we go to the community for additional capacity at one of these campuses, but that's the reality where we are. Even if you tried to rezone and you bring students back over here, this is as far as we really need to be in that building based on capacities. I mean, 1950 is an approximate, but 1750 is what we have now, and it's tight. We're going to have the corridor put in there, which will help, but you'll see there that our high school capacities are much more of a pinch point than the middle schools in the pretty near future. So we wanted to make sure everyone had access to that information and just be fully transparent with it as what our realities are right now. So in talking about phases, we are here right now in fall of 2025. We are naming schools right now. We are in the process of mascots and colors. Talked a little bit about that. We've also got the principal selections coming up. We also have the staff transfer process. So we'll be talking with our staff. Once the principal's announced, we'll be starting the staff transfer, so they will have an opportunity to apply for a transfer. And then we'll use the applications of those that are interested in volunteering to change campuses, and then we'll go through that process with our staff internally. In the spring, we'll have the middle school principals, they'll actually plan their staffing, because at that point, we'll have both of them on board. We'll be looking at the intra-district transfer process for middle school, which won't impact anybody at this campus, But any of the students that are going to the west side, they will have the opportunity to stay as an 8th grader only if they so choose. That's part of board policy for that 1 year. And then our transition teams will continue to plan for the 2 high schools. We'll adjust based on any demographer changes or anything that comes out of the fall report. We'll be planning transportation routes. We'll be looking at the spring demographer report when it comes in. And in the summer, we'll start our official notifications to UIL that we'll be opening a new campus in 2027. And then we'll be preparing to move into the 407 campus and getting this ready to receive the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders from the east side for next year. So that's really what's going on this year. Next year, we'll be looking at, obviously, that both middle schools will open. We'll be naming a high school number 2 principal in the early fall. That will need to be named earlier than typically a middle school. We'll be also looking at our program-specific head coaches and directors, like band director, those types of things, getting those named. And then we'll have another fall demographer report. But we'll also, by September, we will be looking at finalizing, the opening configuration and making sure your people have the opportunity to make their commitment at that point. So you'll know late summer exactly how, if not before, how we're going to do that opening. And then we'll have our final notification to UIL as far as high school number 2, because we will have to turn in our numbers in October of next fall of how we're going to open this campus, because they have to put us in a district for 1 year. The spring of next year, so a year from this upcoming spring, we'll be doing all the staffing, so high school staffing the same way as middle school. And then we'll also at the same time be staffing for elementary 5. So elementary 5 will also be opening in 2027. So we've got not only the middle school opening, then the high school's transitioning, but we open our 5th elementary school as well in the fall of 2027. So all of those processes, continuing the budget planning for that, and then they'll be establishing booster clubs and PTOs for the second high school and those programs as well in the spring of 27, and then we'll be preparing to move into those buildings. So I'm going to turn it over now to Ms. Lumsden and let her talk a little bit about the middle school experience next year. I think she can talk to that, and then we'll go into the high school part.
Okay, so next year, on the west zone, the 6th graders will go to the 6th grade center, and the 7th and 8th graders will be at that new middle school building. And over here, we'll have the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders all together. I'm going to do a shameless plug right now. If you aren't curious about SpongeBob from looking behind us, you should be. Next week, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, our middle schools will be performing that, and you would not believe what these middle schoolers do on the stage. So I would just say come and see that. That speaks a little bit to the experience. I think that's not shameless, because I am shameless for saying that. You should come see it. So that's the demographers numbers we have right now that we're planning. We know that those are going to be a little bigger when we get the numbers in December. The middle school experience, it's important to me that our middle schoolers have trusted adults they can come and find, that they have a good experience while they're here. I think what's important at Argyle and to me and to our teachers is that middle schoolers do more than they ever thought they could. When you go listen to our jazz band or the choir or come to one of these plays, it's amazing, like you think you're watching a high school. So they perform really outside of what you would think. You go, this last weekend I went to watch our volleyball girls play, and what really impressed upon me there was just the love and the teammanship that they had for each other. We didn't advance as far as we wanted to in those tournaments, but those girls really, truly enjoyed being each other's presence and being together. So I think just what you get from athletics and the competition is more than your outcome. And that's what I want our middle schoolers to understand is go and do, go and be involved, go and see, try things. And also, I like to remind them it's okay, you don't have to act cool all the time. We can do some of those silly things we did at elementary, and we can have fun, and we can be silly, and that's okay because we're going to balance that with really hard work and in the academic classroom. I think that's it. I want them to have a good time, but I want them to push themselves and learn and do the best they can do.
Thank you very much. All right, and so then we're going to move into first year of high school openings. So talked a little bit about configurations. Again, you'll have the west side will all be at Canyon Falls. They'll have their 9th and 10th graders, of course. And as I've said, we started all of our planning based on them having all the 11th and 12th graders. So you're going to kind of see these on the slides, but you know that we've got two things we're kind of working on. The east attendance zone will be the 9th and 10th graders over here. Or it could be the 9th and then 10th and 11th options, of which you'll see some more again in a minute on that. And then it'll have the middle schoolers, 6th, 7th, and 8th. So we've got this campus right here, which is where what you're focused on, is going to have a high school, middle school combination in that first year. As far as projections, these are the numbers that we are the demographer is projecting. So we have on there as far as opening on the left, a current configuration of just 9, 10. And on the right is a 9, 10, 11, which a 10, 11 potential option. We put both there. You'll see that regardless of which one we do, if we get approximately the minimum number that we need for a half of each class, it's about the same as far as the numbers. They're right there together. And that puts us still in a current 3A for that first year. Again, that's the first year only. Now, UIL is about to realign, and the numbers, they adjust those every 2 years. But historically, that's a pretty safe place where we would expect it to fall that first year is in that 3A round. You'll see there the current 4A doesn't start until 545. So that would be the first year. One of those two options would be what we're going to open up as far as configuration. Let Coach Rogers come up and talk a little bit about athletics the first year, because I know that's been a topic of a lot of conversations around town. So we'll let him talk about that.
One of the things that I'm asked is, well, what it's going to look like. Well, I've been here. We've had this many numbers of kids in this building many, many times, and we won a lot of games. So if anybody's worried about success, I think it's critical. If you just look at the numbers, there's predicted success. And so as long as we can hire and retain good staff, where our board and our administration is doing that, we can get good people in here. What I've done right here is try to look what the first year looks like. Everything has got a varsity or a sub-varsity would be yes. Notice that just like I talked about when we opened the building way back in the early 2000s, we'll choose not to play varsity sports, varsity football the first year. We'll play a renegade schedule and get acclimated to the opponents that we're playing. But we're more than viable to have competitive varsity sports just like it's listed up here. Critical numbers will play a role of that. The only caveat that I want to offer right here is we have a baseball and softball complex that was approved by the voters, and there may be some construction deadlines in the event with that, just so we don't have multiple baseball teams from 2 high schools practice on one field. I may choose to do sub-varsity baseball and sub-varsity softball that 1 year until that facility can get completed. But right now I'm being told that there's a chance that it could be ready to go in January of 2028. That'd be perfect timing. So that's the only thing that I've got noted on here that could be something a little bit different than what's anticipated.
Will you talk a little bit about staffing, how you'll handle staffing?
Okay, well staffing, we'll just go back and look at the numbers with staffing. I have all that planned out about how you cover every sport. Obviously, right now most coaches only coach 2 sports. But there's going to be some instances where coaches can coach 2 and 3 sports, just like we did back in the old days. I mean, when I got hired here, we all were in the basketball coach's office. If you've ever seen it, it's about the size of this podium. And so there was 9 of us in there, and we ran into each other a little bit while we were getting out and going to work. But we have the gymnasiums to coach as many sports as we need. We have the facilities. That's not even a question. When I got here, we didn't have the field house. The field house was open that spring, so we've got great facilities. We've got a girls' field house, so it's just a matter of being able to staff it. I'm looking right now, starting the middle school with five football coaches, 3 basketball coaches for the boys, 3 for the girls, and volleyball will have 3. So we'll be able to staff the middle school almost as good as we can do right now. Now, these are going to be teachers, and they're going to have to teach all day like they're currently doing. So there's no gravy-trained coaching position in anywhere in our program in regards to they're full-time teachers and they're working a full day in the academic classroom. When it goes to the high school, we may have some shared responsibilities between a middle school coach and a high school coach. So that's what we did. We were 6 through 12 in this building. And I was looking back at some of the names. I had a varsity football coach that had to go be a middle school basketball coach. So those things are very doable. The expectations are that you get out there and you give your very best as a coach. You recruit kids to the programs. If you see any deficiencies or you see a good basketball player walking in the hallway, you go recruit him to play basketball for him, make a contribution. So it's not a lot different than in years past. It's just smaller to scale.
And whenever they go through the staffing transfers, Coach Rogers, Coach Westmoreland, Ms. Knowles, and the high school they'll sit down, they'll go through all of that, and they'll have a good balance of experience and program expertise across both high schools. So we will see staff that may currently be at Argyle High School that will come over here. And so that is a possibility. All right, Mr. Byrd, talk about fine arts in year one.
So I have been asked a lot about, what we're going to be offering, especially when it comes to marching band. And we've had a long series of years and years of strong success in marching band. And so I get asked a lot about what that's going to look like when we come over here. And it'll look a lot like what it was whenever we were over here. UIL is a little bit different with music organizations than they are with athletic organizations. We are able to use 8th graders and 7th graders in our marching organizations, in our music organizations, and we currently do, even at the high school today. We have some 8th grade students who do march with us every Friday night and go to all of our competitions, believe it or not. And that UIL allows that from 1A all the way up to 5A. Once you get to 6A, they do not allow that. They allow that because of numbers. And so when we open up in 2027, students participating in the marching band will compete in all the UIL concert site rating evaluation, the UIL marching band contest, and local marching band contests as we do right now. And the plan would be to compete at the varsity level, competing at the highest level we could possibly compete at, and staff the marching band appropriately based on those numbers. Students will also individually participate in the Team EA ATSSB All-State Band process. For those of you who don't know what that is like the students prepare individual etudes, and they compete against other individuals within their classification for a spot like in the All-State Band. And it's all based on what classification your school's at. Choir, same thing. Students participating in the concert program will compete in the UIL concert site evaluation. Students will also individually participate in the Team A All-State Choir process. And just like the marching band and concert band, 7th and 8th graders are able to be used for those are able to participate with high school students if needed. And we would recruit if we needed to. UIL one-act play. Students participating in the one-act will compete against at the highest level available. Other opportunities for involvement maybe include the International Thespian Society, musicals, and other events. Did I catch everything on this one? Do I switch it or somebody else switch it? Oh, that's okay. Oh, there you go. All right, thank you. Dance, students participating in dance team may compete the Texas Dance Educators Association dance team assessment like we currently do at the Canyon Falls campus. And local national dance team competitions, team members will also have the opportunity to compete individually at the dance competitions. Art students will be able to compete in the visual arts scholastic events at the highest level available. Students will also have opportunities to compete at the TASB Art Exhibition, Collaborating Art, Youth Art Month, Spring Exhibition, the YAM Flag Design Competition, Congressional Art Competition, Doodle for Google. You can kind of read the rest of it. My mouth is getting kind of dry at this point. But the Texas Fish Art Contest and other various contests. We have an incredible fine arts staff. And the fine arts staff at Argyle ISD have met several times from the beginning of the school year to now, trying to work through the transition process going into 2 middle schools and 2 high schools. Miss Erin Turek is up there running the board. She's been a good teammate of mine, working through how we're going to what it's going to look like, the supplies needed to outfit both campuses, programs that are going to be offered, and kind of looking at it from the macro lens, going down to the micro lens of what UIL allows and how that would look. And so that is currently how we see it. And when I first got here in 2018, we were a 4A high school, I came when I came here. I don't know how it was, like 700, maybe 50 students in the school, and it was an amazing experience because we shared the kids. Coach Rogers and I met several times. We shared students, and we recruited students, and we worked together. And other coaches and the fine art staff will work well together to create these opportunities for the kids to participate in all these activities that are happening. So that's it, I think. All right, thank you so much.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much, Mr. Bird, and for sharing that experience as well, because I have heard that a lot as I've asked questions about how much they work together when this campus was all one. All right, Dr. Jordan, if you'll come talk about kind of just course selections, and we have 9th and 10th up here only, but you can kind of talk a little bit about that. Thank you.
I'll review the course options that we project. My code here is, you'll see English 1 and 2 plus H, so we also will have the honors options. If you see plus AP, then that would be another option. So the course offerings you're looking at are the same course offerings that you're looking at for 9th and 10th graders now. There's not as many elective options for our 9th and 10th graders. One thing I want to assure you is I've heard some rumors about virtual. TEA does not allow us to ask a teacher to teach virtual and in-person classes at the same time, nor do we want to. We've done that before, right? It's not what's best for kids, and that's what you're going to hear us say over and over again, is that our mantra is we do what's best for kids. But this is also what's good for teachers. So I'm not saying that we would never have a virtual option, because we also want to provide choice for families. So we've talked about what would that look like one day for us to have a virtual option that families may choose. That is what happening right now. So we will have in-person classes in our middle school, in our high school. So we have fabulous kids, and that allows us, for teachers who are very, very passionate about their content areas, to teach more than one class during a class period. And you'll say, how do they do that? Well, let me give you an example of how amazing our kids are, is you know that 5 of our campuses did not have internet today. It was Red Ribbon Week, which means they were wearing pajamas or 50s. The fire alarm was randomly going off at the middle school, and you know what? It was a great day at school. Our teachers were smiling and ready to go. Our kids were like, just another day. That's why our teachers can teach more than one subject in a classroom at a time, because we have amazing kids that you are sending to us ready to learn. So as far as CTE pathways and other electives, students will continue to fill out their class choice cards just like they're doing now. They're going to make their class selections. When it comes to electives, they're going to have 2 and 3 choices, because not every class made last year, not every class made this year, and not every class will make next year. But we do our very best to meet the needs of our students and give them as many options as we can.
Thank you very much. All right, moving along. So just kind of go over what transfer process looks like. So FDB local is the transfer process. That's called intra-district transfers. That means you already live in the district, you've been in school here, so that is what an intra-district transfer is. So a couple scenarios here, if you know that we'll work through as we go through opening configurations. But if we open with 9th and 10th only, then we'll have intra-district transfer applications for the same campus, 9th and 10th grade sibling, to stay at the Canyon Falls campus for 1 year only. That's the way policy is currently written. Obviously, each one of those transfers has to be approved by the superintendent, transportations by the parent. The transfers can be revoked for things like tardies, absences, discipline, things like that, different opportunities there. If approved, the sibling transfers, again, they're good for 1 year at a time. So no transfer is good for multiple years in a row. And so all of that's based on capacity and what the circumstance is. And then additional transfer requests can be applied for. So if that's 9th and 10th only, then that's how that would work based on policy right now. If we open as a high school and it's 9th grade only with 10th and 11th option, then that sibling transfer process is really only eligible for the 9th graders because the 10th graders and 11th graders have an option. So the freshmen that have a senior sibling, they would have the opportunity to apply for those transfers. Again, same approval process, 1 year at a time, etc. So that's how FDB Local is currently written, and that's what we're working off of as far as planning for those numbers. And like I said, we've already run our seniors. I think we have 76 on the East Zone for that year. There's 12 of those have a freshman sibling, and then we've run our juniors and sophomore rosters as well. So looking at year 2, again, same attendance zone or same zones there. If we're 9th and 10th only, 11th grade automatically matriculates up. If we end up having the options, then you'll see on this next slide that we could potentially have our first graduating class in that 29 school year. If we start with the junior option, obviously those juniors are going to roll up, and we'll have a partial class graduating as seniors that second year over here. So you'll see 9th, 10th, and 11th, that's about 780. Those numbers are right at about 780 if we open up that way. If we open up the year before with 9th grade, 10th, and 11th an option, and you are expecting about half of those classes, those 2 option classes, to participate, your enrollment is about the same. There's not much difference there. So you could potentially have 2 partial classes, 2 full classes, or 3 full classes in this campus as far as the second year that the high school is open. What's important about this year is this is the 28-29 school year. So the way UIL sets you for the following alignment is they take your snapshot in October of 27. So as soon as we open that first October, we will have to take a snapshot. And if we open with 9 and 10 only, it's 9 and 10th times 2. That's the number we turn in. If we open 9 through 11th, it's 9 through 11th times 1.33. So that's the way UIL runs that, and that sets you for the 28, 29, 29, 30 school year as far as your 2-year alignment goes. And we expect that to fall in the 4A range. Right now, it looks like, based on the numbers right now, both of those numbers, the times 2 or the 1.33, either one would fall in the 4A D2 for the football, 4A for everything else. But again, those numbers can change just enough that it could roll into 4A D1. But either way, those would be slated to be in 4A and stay there. Coach Rogers, they've gone through, and Coach Westmoreland, they don't expect anything different except varsity football in year 2. So everything would remain the same, and they would have varsity football in a full alignment at that time and a new 2-year alignment. And then, Dr. Jordan, you want to add to, and then, of course, music, there wasn't anything different on fine arts because those programs were all there. You want to talk a little bit about the academics?
So you'll see a lot more electives here, and the electives that I listed are the electives that we currently have with the highest enrollment. So I would predict that those would be the electives that I would feel very confident that would make for that school year. Will there be others? Without a doubt. Will they be the exact same at both campuses? There's no way to know because your child chooses their classes, and every year, even at our high school campus, there are some changes in electives based on our students' wants and needs. So we will continue to follow that same theory of we're meeting our students where they are and helping them follow their passions and meet their needs with teachers who are equally passionate about their content area and willing to go above and beyond to make sure our students have those opportunities.
And then rolling into the 3rd year, this would be the 29-30 school year. This is the school year that the middle school 2 will open, and so the 6th through 8th graders at this point are no longer in this building. So that would give us the opportunity. So if you look at that, depending on how we open in 27, so this could potentially be the first year with the senior class if we open with 9th and 10th only, and you'll see that there on the left. I think Mr. Herron looked up some data the other day, and where's Mr. Herron? Where is he right now? Hey, what was that class that was when we left this building? Okay, so the 2020 graduating class, the last year they were in this building was about 220 some students. So it kind of goes back to right exactly where left this building in 2020. So that would be about 1167. If we open up in the alternate configuration, then you still have 1 partial class in there. So that senior class that year would be your second graduating class out of this building, but it would still be a partial. And that would be approximately, on the projections, a little over 1,000. And so those are they're still pretty close, not as close as the year before, because you still have that one partial class, and now you have 4 full classes over here on this one. Again, the UIL snapshot will be, so you'll be getting ready to do another one for the 2030 school year. So the snapshot of this fall, the October of 29, sets us up for the 2030-32 timeframe. Again, those numbers are starting to creep up into the high end of 4A. Currently, 4A cutoff is 1314. I think the alignment before it was 1299, so it kind of fluctuates. It won't be any higher than that for sure, but it could be lower than that. But you'll kind of see there where we'll be creeping up into that higher end of 4A at that point. So decisions to still be made, for us to still have to make that really impact our parents and our students. We've got to finalize and communicate the opening configuration decision. We know that is coming, and we know that's important to you. We would love to be able to make that decision before the end of the school year, but I really feel like we're going to need all of our demographer reports for this year and have a little bit of time in the summer to make those final decisions and get that communicated out. What you can expect in the first part of the school year next year is you're going to have all the finalized configurations. You're going to have the intra-district transfer process, the commitments that you have to make, whichever choice you may have or you may be eligible for. And then also going on, we'll be naming the principal, we'll be naming athletic coordinator, head football coach, band director. All of those positions will start coming out in the fall next year. And then we'll have course selection offerings going on just like we normally do, aligned with Argyle High School in January of 27. And then the extracurricular activity tryouts will be going on that spring as well. So they'll be preparing for anything that has tryouts that spring will be aligned with when Argyle High School does their normal tryout process. So those are things that we still have that really impact probably our students and parents the most. There's still a lot more on our end to take care of, but that is what you're probably the most concerned about or most interested in. So as we get ready to close, I just want to bring us back to kind of our why. We talked about the board adopting the strategic growth plan, making the decision to go to 2 or multiple high schools eventually, and really creating those opportunities for kids. And this goes back to our why, and what we use, our lens, is that we want our students involved. We want our students in multi-activity, whether it's academics, athletics, fine arts. This is a very exciting time for this district. We all see the news. We all see the news where school districts right around us that are touching our border are having to close campuses and are losing enrollment, and that is not our challenge. Our challenge is finding space for kids and opportunities for kids to be involved, and that's an exciting place to be. I'm very excited for us. We meet pretty frequently. We were together 2 hours today working on things, and everybody's got great ideas. And in the midst of trying to run their own programs and campuses and just the day-to-day, Miss Lumsden, she had a fire alarm, no internet, and she's over there just giving all kinds of ideas today. So I can't champion them enough for what they've done and what they continue to do as we continue to move forward. And I know that, like I said, we can't answer all your questions tonight. We wanted to give you as much as we can, and it's a lot of information, and you'll have the recording. We just appreciate all the questions that we have received through Just Ask Argyle, or whether we're out and about and people come up and ask us questions. We want you to do that. We want you to have the information that we have as soon as we can give it to you, and we'll continue to communicate that as we move forward. But I just want to thank you again for being here tonight. We're going to stay around, and so we'll stay around. We'll come down front and give you a chance to come ask us questions. I know a lot of questions are individualized and scenario-based, so it's probably better that we just kind of work our way around there. And then we'll get that video out later this week, and then we'll also answer any questions that come in. We'll continue to answer Just Ask Argyle. We took our FAQ down because we're reformatting it, and then after tonight and we get a few more questions, we'll put that back up sometime next week on our Soaring Together website. But thank you all for being here. Appreciate all our parents and any students that were here this evening, and we look forward to continuing moving forward. Have a great evening.